Got our man Chris Brown standing by right now out in the field house in the Ad Pro Sports Training Center where the Bills practice is underway. Chris, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Chris Brown, Bills Insider, BuffaloBills.com. Let's start with the motor. Devin Singletary, little change in his practice status, it appears?
Yes, he has a helmet. He is dressed for practice. They're currently going through special teams drills now, guys, and he's lined up with the kick returners, but hasn't taken a rep as of yet. Doing some walkthrough stuff in some of the preliminary stages of practice, so we haven't really seen him in terms of, more significant anticipation is he's probably going to be listed as limited, but this is certainly an encouraging sign, and I think it at least gives him a chance to be up on Sunday. We're going to have to see how he gets through today's practice and kind of go from there and then see if he does anything on Friday, especially if his work level is increased. But this is a first step for sure. I think if we didn't see him out here today, we'd be pretty resigned to assuming that he wasn't going to suit up on Sunday. But I think this at least opens the door a crack.
Right, and I think that's a critical thing. At this point of the season, even with the Patriots, they're looking at Julian Edelman, not Burkhead, but Devlin is out. Their offensive line is nicked up. Injuries seem to be, at this point of the season, you got to start looking at it, and that's the first thing we want to look at. Also, not only Devin Singletary, but also John Feliciano, the guard for the Buffalo Bills, and some other guys that are nicked up as well. Any word on what else is going to happen over there?
Well, the interesting thing with Feliciano today as opposed to yesterday. So yesterday you have Ty Nsekhe getting a veteran rest day, so he wasn't part of the offensive line equation. You also had John Feliciano not really doing a whole lot in practice yesterday as a limited participant. And so what they had was, I'm going to try to remember this off the top of my head. They had Cody Ford at right tackle, and then they had Spencer Long at right guard because of Feliciano's limited nature and Nsekhe not practicing because of a veteran rest day. Now you have Nsekhe back in the fold, and you have Feliciano, at least in the walkthrough portion of practice here, despite wearing a red non-contact jersey, lining up at right guard, Cody Ford lining up at right tackle, and Nsekhe waiting in the wings to kind of rotate in, as he has done in each regular season game this season, typically with the third offensive possession of the game, and then they kind of go from there. The interesting thing, guys, is I think a lot of people were of the opinion in last week's game that Nsekhe was the far more effective right tackle in the game as opposed to Ford, who then had to move into guard by necessity due to Feliciano's neck injury. But here's an interesting statistic for you. Of the 8 touchdown drives that the Bills have had this season, Nsekhe has been the right tackle for 7 of them. And I don't know that that's completely by accident.
That's a good stat. That's a really good stat. Hey, I got to ask you now. So we start with injuries. I want to get on to other issues here as Chris Brown reports from Bills practice. But Zay Jones limited yesterday with the shoulder and red non-contact jersey today. What's that all about?
Yeah, I think it's just they don't want him taking any unnecessary knocks on that shoulder probably. So it's just like a heads up to everybody else. Hey, we may be padded up. We may have shells on today, but don't lay a lick on Jones, in a one-on-one situation. Just kind of steer clear,
right.
Pull up kind of thing if you're a corner that's covering him. And so I think that's just kind of it's literally a red flag. Like, hey, don't come in and give him any unnecessary contact. We're just trying to get through practice and have him as healthy as possible for Sunday. And Trey White's in the same boat.
Right.
He's got the red non-contact jersey on. Now, he did shed that red non-contact jersey in Friday's practice last week. We'll have to see if that's the case again tomorrow.
And just to finish up with the injuries, when did Corey Thompson get hurt with his ankle? Did not practice yesterday. When did that?
Yeah,
did I miss that?
I mean, he was iffy going into last week's game, if you remember, but I don't believe it was an ankle injury. I want to say it was a groin, but I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look at last week's injury report. So this ankle must have come out of the game. And then Coach said yesterday he just had ankle surgery. So I don't know if that meant Wednesday or if that meant earlier in the week. But usually they come in Monday, they kind of assess everything, and then they make a decision if they feel something of that magnitude is required. So I would imagine that it happened Tuesday or Wednesday. So I can't imagine he's part of the equation at all this week after having ankle surgery. Even if it's a cleanup type procedure, you're still looking at 2 to 4 weeks probably. That's I'm just going based off history there. That was not from the team. I'm just going based off of history on what ankle scopes and knee scopes typically take. As we know, every case is different.
One of the things I noticed yesterday about the depth chart was that I think they've got like maybe 22 guys on the entire defensive side of the ball that are actually available and up on the depth chart, which gives them, maybe 28 offensive guys available for Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing the math, yeah. Yep, that's right. So, and you got Feliciano still somewhat of a question mark with the neck, but we'll see how he comes through today after being limited yesterday.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because the rotation gets slim on the defensive side of the ball. You're coming into the Patriots game, and a lot of teams do go a player or two light on the defensive side of the ball, but to me, I don't know. The depth becomes an issue. They got 8 defensive linemen that they're going to rotate through like they always do. They got 6 linebackers. The bottom 3 linebackers, the back 3 linebackers, they're special teams guys. And then you've got Kevin Johnson playing behind 2 different spots on the starting defense as well. So it just strikes me, it just seems a little thin on the defensive side of the ball, particularly when you got.
I mean, and really you only have 5 linebackers, Steve, when you think about it.
Right, Corey
Thompson's
Thompson's
not part
out.
of the equation. But here's the thing. The Patriots go 11 personnel so much with 3 wides that the Bills are going to be in nickel almost the entire game. At least I'm anticipating that. Especially, and I think that's even going to be more so the case with Devlin on IR now, the fullback for the Patriots, because they used to run a lot of 21 personnel with Devlin in the lineup. He's not a part of that lineup anymore, so I'm seeing I'm expecting anyway, a lot of one-back sets. Maybe they go split backs to really kind of throw a curveball at the Bills on occasion, but I think largely they're going to be 3 and 4 wide because that's what they've been even with Devlin when he was healthy.
All I know is whatever they're going to do is going to be unexpected.
Yeah, there'll be something in there.
Hey, Chris, we're going to talk to our listeners today and callers about the matchup they are most interested in. And one matchup that intrigues me is Jerry Hughes versus Marshall Newhouse, who had a cup of coffee with the Bills last September. And I just think overall the Buffalo defensive line may be able to do some damage against kind of a patched-up New England offensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Bills have to go into that matchup knowing that there's going to be tight end and running back chip help for Marshall Newhouse, because I don't know about you guys, but I just don't think he's a left tackle in this league anymore. He's there by necessity with Isaiah Wynn going on IR with the turf toe injury. So, it's a little bit of a patchwork, as you said, because even the center, Ted Karras, is not their typical starting center. Andrews has had that blood clot in his lung, which is, life-threatening, and that's why he's not in the lineup either. So they're trying to get their feet back under him on the O-line, but Brady gets the ball out so quick it can kind of help that. But with a running game that's struggling, I think that's where this offensive line is really having the most trouble in terms of getting in sync and being productive on the offensive side of the ball. It's not necessarily the pass protection as much as it is the run blocking, and I think that's where Jerry can win handily. But knowing that they're going to probably try to compensate for that, I think the Bills have to have a counter move there, whether they overload that side and bring blitz pressure or whether they put a heavier player out there to kind of take care of, Newhouse as a tackle. Maybe you line Jerry up wider in a wide 9 kind of look. I think they've got to come with some countermeasures, knowing that the Patriots are going to be wary of leaving Newhouse one-on-one with Jerry.
Yeah, it seems to me, though, there's no question the Patriots really have an enormous advantage. They've played 5 quarters of football so far where it really mattered and the game was in doubt. They had 3 halves of football games that didn't count, and really a couple of second quarters that really didn't count either. So you don't have much to go on if you're the Buffalo Bills about what the Patriots really think about their own players, let alone about what they think about the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because Coach McDermott was asked that question. You don't really have any good film on them this year because 2 of their games were over at halftime. Does that complicate things? And Coach McDermott just said, they are what they are. They've been doing it for so long. We know what they do. They just happen to execute better than most teams are able to defend it. So they know what's coming, I think, to a large degree. They'll always have the ace up their sleeve for that specific game plan for that given week, as they typically do. And it's just a matter of adjusting on the fly. And it's punch, counter punch with this team. And more often, they've got more effective combinations than their opponents. So that's the challenge. I think the Bills defense should, be given some measure of credit. They've kind of held their team in games better than a lot of other opponents have over the last few years under Coach McDermott. The key now is raising the level of offensive production to that of Buffalo's defense. And if they can do that, they're probably in this game in the third or fourth quarter, and this game is not over at halftime.
Right.
Hey, Chris, one more thing for you. Josh Gordon is not their most productive receiver yet, but I think they're most dangerous. What do the Bills do with him? Is that a Trey White assignment, do you think?
It could be a follow type of deal, but last week we saw John Ross comes into that game leading the league in receiving yards, and they didn't have Trey White follow him. I think it's an example of it's a strong indication of the faith they have in Levi Wallace to hold things down on his end. I don't think that's going to change. I mean, Ross is a more dynamic athlete, in my opinion, than Josh Gordon is. So I don't anticipate it. I suppose it's possible, but I don't anticipate it.
Yeah, I think Ross is a better runner, but I think Josh Gordon is a more skilled all-around receiver, isn't he?
Well, vertically he is, yes. But Levi's a long corner. He's 6 feet tall, and he's got long arms. So if they're worried about jump balls, I don't think they're going to worry about shying away from putting Levi on it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think also one of the things that comes down to is it's not just the matchup. They're not going to do one thing against one guy all day. They got to have a combination. They'll double Josh Gordon with Levi Wallace and a safety. They'll do it with a linebacker. They're going to change things up because if they start doing the same thing against the same guy all day, they become much, much too predictable for a team like the Patriots, and it'll come back to bite them.
And the bread and butter is Edelman, as we know. I mean, in 2 games last year, 15 catches, 174 yards, and a touchdown. He can't be averaging 8 catches a game against the Bills, and he's done that in his career. I mean, he's averaged about 8 catches a game in his 8. He's got 8 career games against the Bills since 2014. He's got 56 catches, 559 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He can't have that kind of production against the Bills because that means the Patriots offense is staying on the field, they're moving the sticks, and they're getting into the scoring territory, and that's not a good recipe. So if Taron Johnson can't go this week, there's going to be enormous pressure on the likes of Saran Neal and Kevin Johnson chiefly, and to a lesser extent Dean Marlowe, to keep him under wraps.
Just quickly, last thing I have for you, Chris. The Bills got to find a way to score some points here, obviously, and I think they need some easy points, whether it's a return of some kind, special teams or defense, or a deep shot downfield. They need some easy points this week, I believe. What do you think?
Right, and I think that's got to be a byproduct of being aggressive. You can't sit back against this Patriots team. Look at what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl. They were aggressive. They took chances. Philly special, whatever you want to call it. They did the opposite of what the Atlanta Falcons did. The Atlanta Falcons went conservative when they had a 25-point lead and blew the Super Bowl. Eagles were aggressive and were rewarded for it. Now, you still have to execute, but the Bills have to be aggressive in this game if they want to take this game from New England. That's the bottom line, and then they have to execute when they are aggressive. And I'll leave you with one thing. I know you'd call me Debbie Downer sometimes there, Murph. I'll leave you with an uplifting note.
Oh, good, okay.
The last team to score an offensive touchdown against the Patriots was the Bills in Week 16 last year.
Wow, Brownie, that's great.
Wait a minute. What about Kansas City?
Well, regular season, I'm talking about. Regular season.
Those postseason. All right, I got you, Debbie Downer. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Brownie.
Chris Brown, Bills Insider, BuffaloBills.com.